Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. And today, I will be reviewing X-Men First Class. So I'm going to start with the positives, and then I'll get on to the negatives. I have to say right off the bat, the best character in this movie is Magneto. I would even go as far as saying that Magneto is actually the main character of this movie. We see so much growth with him and his power. We see how he started off as a young boy in a concentration camp who was just starting to unlock his power because his mother was murdered in front of him. We then fast forward to 1962, where Magneto is trying to find Sebastian Shaw, the man that killed his mother. I have to say, the way they filmed this next scene was really well done. So they had somebody at a bank who knew where Sebastian Shaw was. And just the way that Magneto got this information out of him was pretty cool. I also like the fact that when Magneto was talking to this bank person, that you could see the reflection of the bank guy when the camera was on Magneto. And then you can see the reflection of Magneto on the gold bar when the bank guy was talking. I love it when movies do this because it's such a unique way of filming a scene while having two characters. I also like the scene where Magneto is in a bar in Argentina. Magneto walks into the bar and he sees on the wall an image of two of the customers, and they are with Sebastian Shaw. This is where we get the best scene of the entire movie in my opinion. It's how they have clues about who these two customers are without saying anything. Obviously at some point they do directly say who they are, but I like how they show us first, then tell us later. I also like how the tension slowly goes up, from Magneto seeing the picture, to him getting a beer, and then him talking to the customers, and then we get to the point where he finally kills them. I just love how the tension rises in this scene. It's also really satisfying, because you know what these men have done, and it's just satisfying how Magneto gets his revenge on them in a pretty cool way as well. It was just so satisfying seeing them scared. The other great scene with Magneto is at the end of the movie, where he kills Sebastian Shaw. The irony in the way Sebastian Shaw dies is amazing. At the beginning of the movie, we see Magneto at the concentration camp, and Sebastian Shaw asks Magneto to lift up a coin. Magneto was unable to lift this coin, so Sebastian Shaw brought in his mother and said that if he did not pick up the coin on the count of 3, then Sebastian would kill his mother. Unfortunately for Magneto, he was unable to lift up the coin, but then as soon as his mother's shot and killed, Magneto gets angry and starts destroying everything in sight. I just love the fact how this coin was the thing that started Magneto on his trail of destruction, and that the same coin ends up killing the man that killed his mother. I just love things like this because it calls back to different parts of the movie, and it shows you that you really do need to pay attention. I really like the training montage in the middle of the movie. It was cool to see the progression of the mutants from not being able to control their powers at all to harnessing their full power. I also really like that moment between Charles and Eric. This scene shows how much Charles and Eric were friends, and I also really like the fact that Charles explains to Eric that controlling his power isn't about the anger, but it's about being focused and calm. I like how this movie is in line with the Russian Missile Crisis and the Cold War. I really like it in movies when they intertwine real-life events into a story. The reason why I liked it so much is that it makes it seem like this whole situation could be plausible, meaning that yes, mutants technically caused a nuclear war. I also like the fact that they showed real clips from back in the day when John F. Kennedy was talking about the missile crisis and to warn people about nuclear war. It's just really cool when writers and directors intertwine real-life events into fictional stories. Unfortunately, these were the only really good parts of this movie. So, there is a scene where Sebastian Shaw went to where the mutants were. And I gotta say that this scene kind of pissed me off. Admittedly, the fight scene between Sebastian Shaw and the CIA guards was pretty cool. The thing that irritated me the most about this scene was that the good mutants, we'll call them, were all screaming and huddled together the whole time. The whole thing that got me during this was the fact that they knew they were going to be going into challenging battles. So them being squeamish like this is not a good thing. They had a whole scene earlier in the movie where they were showing each other their powers. So why did they try to not intervene and fight these other bad mutants? The bad guys were killing innocent people, and all the good mutants could do was just sit there huddled in the corner screaming. A couple of scenes later, Professor X and Magneto arrived at the scene of the crime, and it's an okay scene, but it completely contradicts what happens in the last scene. So what I said before was the fact that they were all huddled in the corner and scared and screaming, and they wouldn't help anybody because they were afraid. Now, with this scene, suddenly they were like, we need to avenge our friend? Honestly, where were you then? Why didn't you save him before he was about to die? But no, you were in the background running away. The way I'm thinking about it now is that it almost seems like this was the major part of the movie where it does change because we need to find a way to get to the end of the movie. It would have been better if in the scene where the guy died, where the other mutants at least could have tried to save him and not scream and cry and figure out what's going on. I don't know, man. This just seems weird how they were scared to now suddenly ready to go to war. Within less than 24 hours, mind you. The other thing I didn't really like was the fact that one of the good mutants that was with the others screaming and crying and afraid ended up joining the bad guys. I get it, sure. She doesn't feel included and she feels judged, so she fell for Sebastian Shaw's promises. My problem with this is the fact that she was the one who was scared of these people, and now suddenly she's joining the people that she was so scared of. The other thing that bothered me was the fact that there was no build up to this decision. She just did it out of nowhere. Yes, earlier in the movie, and just before Sebastian Shaw showed up, she was talking about how she always felt judged, and that she was always picked on because she was different. But in no way does this insinuate that she's willing to backstab her team members. For me, it honestly felt like a forced twist that didn't make no sense and didn't have any build-up. Also, one of the mutants was on the good side and pretended like he was going to go to the bad side. And before that happened, he tried to attack the bad guys, and unfortunately he dies. But I have a problem with this. Literally, right before he died, he said, and I quote, "I adapt to survive." This insinuates that he is indestructible. And what I get from that is the fact that, let's say he is hit with fire, then he can adapt himself to counteract the fire. Because it's insinuated that he is indestructible, he should be able to adapt to the energy that was put through him from Sebastian Shaw. Again, it felt like another twist that was forced into the movie. So I think for me, this is the biggest issue of the movie, as well as the other movies in the saga. For me, what I am talking about is the relationship between Raven and Professor X. Don't get me wrong, I think their relationship works really well in this movie, but this contradicts the original movies. In the original movies, it was never mentioned that they knew each other, or, amazingly enough, that they were basically brother and sister. This to me is a major thing that should have been mentioned in the original movies, and for them to be so close and then suddenly not be a thing is weird. I feel like if this movie and the future movies want to be in the same timeline as the original X-Men movies, then they should follow the original storylines. For instance, it was stated in the older movies that Charles Xavier and Magneto had a respectable rivalry, and that they wanted the same things, but they believed different things and they had different ways of going about it. That made sense in this movie, but it was never mentioned in the older movies that Professor X and Raven had such a relationship. I honestly don't know why they had to add this storyline to the movie, but it makes it more confusing for average moviegoers. So what would I rate X-Men First Class? I think I'll rate this movie a 6 out of 10. I did enjoy this movie because it was entertaining, and I was only really interested in Magneto, considering that he seemed like the main character. For me, the scenes that did not have Magneto in it weren't as good. Admittedly, they were still pretty entertaining, but without him, it just felt different. Otherwise, this movie was full of contradictions and a lot of characters that seemed to be hypocritical as well, as the fact that they should say one thing about their powers, but it would be different. Like, saying that you are indestructible should mean that you are indestructible, and not be immediately killed literally 30 seconds later. I will say though, my two favorite characters are Magneto and Charles Xavier. I especially like the actors who were playing them as well. Magneto was played by Michael Fassbender, and Charles Xavier was played by James McAvoy. I think these actors were the perfect actors to play young Charles Xavier Magneto. Anyways, that is the end of this review for X-Men United. The next movie I will review is X-Men Days of Future Past. Thank you all so much for watching, and see you in the next review.